One woman wrote, something that I am dealing with is what NFP in marriage is really like. I'm postpartum from a C-section, so pregnancy is not an option. And NFP postpartum is an absolute disaster. No one tells you that. Sex during pregnancy sucks. Then postpartum, you basically can't have sex. The church did a great injustice in never explaining this to me. I feel totally blindsided.
That's my experience.
Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Jonah. I'm looking kind of grizzly today.
You are.
Yeah.
Haven't had time to shave lately, huh?
Well, I wish I had a good reason for it.
Yeah.
What do you got for us today, Jonah?
Well, this is just a story about how, when you spend time with your kids or do things, you just don't know how it's going to impact them in the future. And so my oldest son, he played football this fall, and he was a receiver. And he had scored some touchdowns playing receiver on like jet sweeps and even some passes. And so it was fun to watch. But the last game of the year, they lined him up at running back. And so it's a different position. And he had taken handoffs on jet sweeps and stuff, but not, he's normally running into an open space, whereas this he had to run towards tacklers. And so he lines up in the I formation. He takes a snap. And he runs, where he's supposed to go. But he's being very patient. He's behind the blockers. And I was like, run. But he was really patient. He waited to get to the second level. There's a linebacker there and a cornerback. And they were both standing pretty close to each other. And he does a juke move and makes them hit each other. And then he ran around the outside and scored a touchdown. And the neat thing about that is that it brought me back to when he was really little, like between the ages of 3 and 6, we would run these drills in our yard where he would try to tackle me and I would just juke him out constantly. And he would laugh and laugh while we did it because he had such a fun time because he could never catch me. And it brought back such joyful memories. And the fact that he did that when he got the ball on the handoff was just, I don't know. It was neat to see. And I can't say for sure that that's, where it stems from, but
the Jonah juke.
Yeah.
Signature move.
Just like a little Barry Sanders.
That's right.
So it was cute to see, but but you don't know, man. Like, you don't know what moments are impactful and what moments make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's fun. All right.
Yeah.
Good job. Good for front yard or backyard football. Yeah. Yeah. Good for him.
Yep.
So, NFP continues to be a real messy thing in my life. Shock.
Yeah.
We're towards the end of. Everybody calls them different things. I think a lot of the ladies on Twitter refer to like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 being like menstruation up until, and when you start to get into the fertility phase, the fertile phase is being phase 2, and then phase 3 being post-fertile. For a lot of,
it's like a military operation. You got different phases.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Waiting for the invasion.
That's right.
Got the troops amassed along the border.
Yep.
And just waiting for the go ahead.
Storm the beach. So we're in phase 3. We're at the end of phase 3.
Right, that's go time, right?
Yeah. Well, in theory, yeah. Right. So last phase 3 is going to end here any day now. You never know exactly how long a cycle is going to last, but
well, you better get your butt in gear then, huh?
Well, so yesterday, I was up getting the kids, most of the kids to bed. So like let's say the 4-year-old through 12-year-old, they share a room. So I was getting them to bed, and the 2-year-old was downstairs with my wife. And so what I do is I bring the kids upstairs and we pray the rosary together. They fall asleep. Sometimes Dad falls asleep.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of our bedtime routine. And so she comes up about 9:00 p.m. carrying the 2-year-old and putting it in bed. Is like, huh. Well,
Worked out.
that's a nice development.
Yeah.
So, and my wife had been in a really good mood, so I was like, okay, I could see how the stars are aligning here. So went downstairs, and we were just kind of chatting and stuff. And
You said something stupid?
no, well, maybe I did, but that wasn't the catastrophic event. The infamous baby monitor
Okay. Yeah.
down there, and all of a sudden there's movement, and the 2-year-old is up. At first, she's just crying. So she had been down for about 30 to 45 minutes from like 9:00 to 9:45 p.m., which is not a good development.
She's re-energized.
Yeah. So brought her down, and I think my wife was really trying to make something happen because she's like, okay, let's calm down. She puts her in the carrier and fought with her, and the baby's just like kind of punching her and stuff. And finally, she gave up, and I gave up, went to bed. So
Here we are.
And that's just, this is the part that just aggravates me when people say, well, hey, it's abstinence is fine because you'll have plenty of opportunities during the non-abstinence times. Yeah, that's not how it works, people. So
Yeah, I'm sure like on paper it looks like you have all these days in a row.
Yep.
But then you got phase 1 starting, and
Yep.
just know that's
Yep.
pretty much off the table.
Yeah, right. So yeah, so an opportunity was, wasn't for lack of effort or lack of interest by mom and dad, but the kids have other. So I continue to assert that children are the main barrier to intimacy and could be the near occasion of sin for Catholics.
It's coming from a dark place.
Yeah, a little grumpy today.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
The only thing that keeps me going is eventually this will be their plight in life too.
And they can suffer.
Yep.
Well, misery loves company.
That's
so
right. That's
you've got
right.
that to look forward
That's
to.
exactly right. I'll be sitting out on our, porch swing or whatever, and
Just laughing.
yeah. So anyway,
Well, good luck tonight.
yeah. Well, I try. Yeah, I don't know. Marriage and NFP is about keeping expectations very low.
Mm-hmm.
Expect nothing, and then you can only be positively surprised.
That works for marriage. I mean, it does.
Yep.
And for NFP, it does too. But.
Yep. Because there's just so many things outside your control.
Mm-hmm.
My control, anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's why you got to try for the midday, afternoon delight sort of thing.
Hey, I would agree if she would agree. But
and it's funny because
nope.
I don't know. I'm a huge fan of it myself, but
we don't have children that nap reliably. So
they can watch a movie. So it's not at the age of 2.
Not this one.
Not at the age of 2. But maybe in a year or 2. Maybe. So you've got that to look forward to, something positive to look forward to.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm skeptical, but
try to introduce something new to the schedule, I guess.
That's hard to do when you've been married as long as we have, and
can't teach an old dog.
People have patterns, yeah.
But it could be exciting to actually see what's going on.
Yeah. I've been getting more what do we say? Clairvoyant, is that the right word?
Like you can see into the future, or
no,
you're like a fortune teller?
Wrong word. What we have found, because the youngest always ends up sleeping in our room in their own bed, but
you could read your wife's mind. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
No, wrong.
Okay.
But we always have. It has to be, the room has to be totally dark, because if that child gets a glimmer of a cell phone light, or just a screen, they're up.
That's funny.
It's like World War II. You know how they used to shut all the lights off
Yeah.
in the cities and stuff like that. That's what it's like.
Oh man.
But she's entering a phase where she sleeps more deeply, so I feel like I can like leave a little nightlight on, which is nice.
Yeah.
Adds to the experience.
Add some mood lighting. So, if God came to you and said,
Oh my.
I'll give you the gift of being able to read your wife's mind, would you want that? Good and bad.
Yes.
You would?
Yes. Because she already tells me exactly what's on my mind.
She might sugarcoat it, even though it feels like she doesn't.
No. I'm convinced I get the blunt truth of what she's thinking.
Unfiltered thought.
But what she doesn't tell me is what she wants. So that's the part that I want to figure out.
That's fair.
So I don't think there's much being held back that could hurt me. That I don't already know.
That's funny.
So
all right, so you take that.
I would. Yeah.
I have a feeling that even if I could read my wife's thoughts sometimes, I would still be confused. Because there'd be conflicting thoughts. And it's like
the Matrix where all the letters and stuff are code is scrolling.
So complicated.
Yeah.
A simple man like myself isn't capable of figuring it out.
That's right. Okay.
I'm willing to bet that.
Would you want your wife to be able to read your mind?
Sure. I mean, I don't care. There isn't much rolling around in there.
I keep a lot of my thoughts locked up where they're safe. So.
No, I don't really keep much hitting my wife mentally. That's for sure. I don't think.
Oh, see, that's where we're totally different people.
No, especially since I've just started, airing grievances sometimes. I held that in for a long time, but
I'm still in
the airing of grievances really helped our relationship, I think.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
Go for it, man. You got to be strong.
See, I got to always which phase do I do it in?
Oh, well.
Phase 2 seems the more safer.
You're not going to do it during phase 2. Oh,
yeah.
Well, I suppose, yeah.
Nothing can happen. She can't take anything away from me.
Well, yeah, phase 2 is fair, and she's probably in a better mood.
Yeah.
It's risky for me because we prefer the phase 2 period.
No, we're in the desert anyway, so you might as well.
Yeah, might as well duke it out then. And she's in a better mood. That's the perfect time.
Yeah, okay. I always tell myself that, and then I chicken out.
I will rarely bring things up during phase 3 or PMS week. So
okay.
You're asking for a real building up of forces to go to battle there if you say something during that week. But
I always feel like I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. And so I err on the side of keeping my mouth shut.
No, you can't hold it in.
It served me poorly this long. Why not continue doing it?
Why change the plan?
That's right. So, I wanted to talk to you about an article today. Let me see if I can get it up on the screen here. And I'm gonna let's see here. I think that'll work. So, let me see if I can.
Do you think your wife would be appalled if she could read your thoughts?
Appalled might be a strong word, but she'd certainly be annoyed.
She'd be surprised.
I think so, because I keep a lot of my frustrations close to the vest.
You're like a dam holding back.
Yeah. I think she would be surprised at what goes on inside this brain. She says she wants to know, but I don't think she really wants to know.
Well, yeah, that's probably fair too.
Yeah. So so this is an article we had considered talking about when we had Father Carr on last week, but we just ran out of time. And it started when someone originally posted this. I think it was maybe posted in the Discord. It didn't make sense to me because, like, why is he talking about the invasion of Ukraine by Russia? But as I read the article, it made more sense to me. So and I'll put a link to this article. I'll try to, if I remember, put a link to this article in the description. But it's if you just search Chris Damian and NFP nightmare on religions, Russian scarcity, and natural family planning.
It came up for me too. If I just put in Chris Damian NFP nightmare, it came right up.
This is a Substack page here. So it starts out, he's talking about someone who's talking about Russia and the culture there, and maybe I should just so he said Romani highlighted how the West often fails to understand Putin because Western invasions and wars have tended to focus on geopolitical opportunism or regime insecurity. Given Russia's previously rising power status and the lack of threat posed by Ukraine politically, such a focus doesn't make sense. Instead, Romani highlighted Putin's apparent interest in legacy building and identity construction. Putin wants to challenge the, quote, U.S.-led legal order, unquote, and have a, quote, a superpower-style global reach, unquote. Putin sees Russia as a cultural challenge to Western ideals and lifestyles. And this is kind of where he gets to the point and how he ties this into NFP. This helps to explain why a crippled Russian economy and the possibility of plunging the Russian people into poverty is a potential source of pride for Putin. Romani writes that the costs of military interventions to the Russian people are rationalized by highlighting Russia's capacity for self-sacrifice as a contrast to perceived Western decadence. In a way, Putin sees economic scarcity for his people as an opportunity to manifest what he sees as a markedly Russian virtue, the ability to persevere under extreme material hardship. If Americans are terrible because of our decadence, Russians are made great by poverty and destitution. At this point, I was starting to see where this lined up with NFP. So he says this sort of idealism has an extremely perverse quality about it. The more the Russian people suffer under hardship, under this view, the more they become distinctly Russian. That is, Russian pride can be strongest when the Russian people are poor. So it's possible that economic sanctions against Russia, rather than deterring a political leader like Putin, who wants to establish himself as a religious and cultural leader to live permanently in Russia's historical and political identity, would actually embolden him. So this is where he pivots to NFP. Such a dynamic is not unique to Russia. It also appears in parts of Western Christianity, especially in the area of human sexuality. It emerged, for example, in a conversation I recently hosted with a number of women on purity culture, natural family planning, and Catholicism. The conversation began with women sharing how purity culture, parentheses, often driven through such figures as Christopher West, Jason Everett, and others.
Our name isn't mentioned there?
No. No, we must be one of the good guys.
We're the Americans in this case.
Yeah, that's right. Has left them with ongoing shame and anxiety when doing things like having sex with their husbands, buying pregnancy tests, or even walking by aisles of feminine products at the grocery store.
My gosh.
That's surprising. I mean, my wife.
That's terrible.
Yeah. There were a lot of these stories. One woman shared, I am married and 33. Needed a pregnancy test, and the embarrassment and anxiety I felt about being in that aisle because of purity culture is ridiculous. I am so upset with how strongly it permeated my life. We've bought a lot of pregnancy tests in our marriage.
Just going to ask you, do you ever buy feminine items for your wife?
A couple times.
I had to, like, this past week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I got them or whatever, she told me what to get, and went and got them. And it's at our local grocery store. And I don't know why, but you feel kind of like weird about it.
Yeah.
So I was buying those, so I put that stuff on top of it, for the checkout. Somebody, one of the teachers at the kid's school,
comes up behind,
and she's scanning it, all the items, the checkout clerk. And of course, that was revealed, and she looked over at us and was like, "I'm menstruating this month."
Gee, that's right.
That's all you can say.
That's right. I don't worry. That doesn't bother me as much as buying pregnancy tests, especially when I was pretty old,
Mhm.
when we were still having this problem. Kind of look at me.
The pregnancy tests don't bother me, but I don't have as many kids as
Yeah.
you do. So. And I don't know why it's weird for me to buy the feminine items. I think it's because I don't really know what I'm buying. Like.
Yeah. Thick, thin, wide, flaps, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can get the wrong thing easily.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Anyway,
sorry.
okay. I don't think my wife's ever been bothered by this part of it. This story became the catalyst for a host of other stories. Many cradle Catholics shared with similar insecurities. They also shared how popular Catholic messaging around sex and NFP left them unprepared for the realities of marriage. One woman wrote, "Something that I am dealing with is what NFP and marriage is really like. I'm postpartum from a C-section, so pregnancy is not an option. And NFP postpartum is an absolute disaster. No one tells you that. Sex during pregnancy sucks. Then postpartum, you basically can't have sex. The church did a great injustice in never explaining this to me. I feel totally blindsided."
That's my experience.
Yeah.
As far as, we didn't really do it a lot during pregnancy.
Mhm.
And then postpartum, she was breastfeeding and not really in the mood. And so, that's why we had such a very dry spell for like 10 years.
See, I see why you have 4 kids. We never had that problem, and we have 9 kids. So
We just got married too late in life.
Oh, okay.
You've been married like 8 more years than me, I think.
Yeah, we've been married for 22 years.
Yeah, so it's almost 10.
Yeah.
And we had some miscarriages too, so we could have had more children. But.
Yep. Also, the most reliable NFP postpartum, Marquette, yay, Marquette, doesn't always work. Depending on your hormones.
Oh, look out.
That's not good.
You're really counting on that.
Don't tell my wife. It works, but you literally just never have sex. Yeah,
that's a fair assessment of it.
That matches with my experience. This issue for me has caused me to lose faith in the church because it has become choosing between being intimate with my spouse or going to hell. You can relate. I can relate to those thoughts. Some women did share positive experiences with NFP while stating that they understand it doesn't always work well for everyone. And even the critics of the rhetoric promoting NFP recognize it can be helpful for many women, but not all. Some women had horrible stories of struggling between constant pregnancies and miscarriages for a decade or more. One woman wrote, "I started marriage a very committed NFP Catholic. After 5 high-risk pregnancies in 8 years, my husband got a vasectomy in sheer desperation. It was the most life-giving decision we made for our marriage."
Oh, gosh.
A few women discussed a mixture of guilt and relief after their husbands' vasectomies. Often others shared how they continued to struggle with the frequency of their pregnancies and fears over their ability to take care of their current children. Another woman shared, "We've been married 7 years, had a honeymoon baby, then a miscarriage, then spontaneous triplets born at 28 weeks. Whew. We are not in a place to have more kids, multiples right now, indefinitely. So we have just been abstaining like 90%, 97% of the time for 4 years and counting. I'm only 31. It's pretty miserable." Oh,
that sounds difficult.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what the article is getting at. I mean, you're supposed to embrace the misery. But the problem is that in marriage, there's all kinds of misery to embrace. Yeah. And it just piles up.
Yeah. Often these experiences left women with feelings of failure and abandonment. One woman wrote, "I feel the Catholic Church has totally failed me. I feel abandoned. I followed the rules. I got pregnant 10 times in 10 years. Man, 6 births, 4 miscarriages. The 5th baby led to PPD."
What's that? Postpartum
depression. I think that's right. "I got so scared about my 6th pregnancy because I'd again, failed at NFP, that I didn't tell my husband until I was 6 weeks along. I love all my kids, but the constant, more or less unintended pregnancies have been hard on our marriage. He had a vasectomy last year, and I felt such shame, but also a lot of relief. I was in uh, I was in a parish with lots of gold star Catholics who all seemed to have it figured out, or at least who appeared to delight in their massive families, whereas I felt like I was drowning. Many women struggled. Many women shared struggles to quote follow the rules when it comes to Catholicism and sex. One wrote how switching from Marquette to Billings was helpful, but the majority shared how rather than the total, free, fruitful, and faithful vision of a wonderful sex life that was advertised to them by Catholic speakers, sex and sexuality within their marriage is more characterized by shame, anxiety, and fear. Fertility was experienced as a huge burden. Yeah, I can relate to that. And a barrier to the intimacy that we were made for. But the positive experience of some Catholics when it comes to NFP can blind them to the hardships of others, some argued. One woman wrote, all the Catholic influences are women who love their NFP journey and can't imagine it any other way.
And that includes Christopher West.
I guess. Yep. The glorification of suffering. So this is kind of the punchline here. Sometimes when these hardships were brought up, they were glorified. Women shared with me stories of going to their NFP practitioners or spiritual mentors with their struggles and being told simply that their suffering was beautiful and to unite it to the cross. A sort of Putin-style glorification of suffering came up in response to these women who shared horror stories related to NFP. One person who teaches the Marquette method responded in a way that many of the women had complained about. I think many of these responses are people who truly don't understand NFP, whether logistically or the spiritual aspect of it. I try to be very realistic with my couples. Abstaining sucks. We could definitely do better about talking about the hard aspects. That being said, the church teaches us suffering is good and holy. Abstaining, when it's particularly hard, gives us reason to grow in holiness. I think that is a key part of NFP teaching that's being missed. The hard parts can be beneficial to us in our marriage if we let them, if we lean in. Redemptive suffering is beautiful. A number of women shared strong reactions to this Marquette method teacher. It's important to note that if they didn't understand something logistically, and this understanding led to 6 births and 4 miscarriages in 10 years, it's not the woman's fault. If there are this many stories of failure and the failure is because of a lack of understanding, then the problem is probably with the teacher. If a large number of mechanic school graduates don't know how to safely fix a car, then the school has a responsibility for the lives impacted. Failure in this area is not low risk. It's a problem costing some women hundreds of thousands of dollars and weeks or months of not being able to work. For the women who work in Catholic schools, they may not have paid time off or full health care coverage. But what struck the women in the response to the Marquette method teacher was the disposition towards suffering. One woman shared in response, totally respect different perspectives, and I do believe suffering can be beneficial, but I think certain aspects of Catholicism border on masochism. Life is so full of suffering that is out of our control. It seems like adding to that suffering with something that can be more controlled is unnecessary to me. That's what we've talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the church would encourage someone in pain not to take painkillers or people who are depressed not to take antidepressants. I can certainly see how self-control and surrender can be beneficial. And if NFP works for you and makes your marriage more holy, awesome. But it seems like it's actually pushing many people further from God, themselves, and their partners. And it's hard for me to accept that's what God intends for love. I'm not ready to fully disregard church teaching, but I just don't think the suffering is a good idea. I don't think the suffering is good idea helps.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's more, but that that really resonated with me because I see that all the time over on Twitter. It happened yesterday. We were debating this, and someone was like, "Well, no one said Christianity is easy and all. I'm like, you know, it reminds me of the saying, everything happens for a reason.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's because you're stupid and make bad decisions, right?
Yeah.
So that I think this is a major problem for Catholic thought and debate, because you know our faith is built around Jesus Christ, who went through the passion, suffered, and died. Some of the most revered people in our history are martyrs who literally gave up their lives for the faith, right?
Mhm.
That's sort of um, held up as the ideal standard for being a Catholic. We should be martyrs, right? And so there is this default assumption that suffering is always meritorious, and maybe it can always be meritorious, and therefore, uh, you know, if you are trying to remove some suffering, you're somehow making yourself less Catholic, or you're separating yourself from the core of Christianity, which is suffering. I think that's a real problem.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of a cop out, because, like you said, even if you took this away from people, it's not like marriage is a cakewalk, and like
Yeah.
you still have all of the dynamics in life, different personalities, male versus female, raising children, all that kind of stuff.
And I think that it's okay in a marriage where there's just two people, where it's a
Mhm.
Josephite marriage where just you and your wife, you guys just want to suffer the rest of your life.
Yeah,
That's fine.
right.
But when you have kids, should they grow up in a household of suffering? Or should they witness their parents loving each other? Like, this is a real story. So our oldest son, for the longest time, said he was never going to get married.
Mhm.
And now, over the last few years, since we started being more loving, and outwardly showing it, he talks about it now. As far as maybe, getting married someday. So I don't know. I think that stuff has a direct impact on the kids. I mean, it's difficult, I think, to live in a household where you just have to be cold to your wife. And there's this, whether it's forced abstinence or for us, it was just more of a combination of situations that led to a lack of intimacy. And I don't know.
I think you're really onto something here, and this is something I think I don't ever see get talked about in any of these discussions. Is your suffering isn't just your suffering, and it's not just you and your spouse's suffering, right?
Mhm.
And if you're going through those difficult times, and let's say it's causing some tension between the two of you, the spouses themselves know what's going on, right? And if they
Mhm.
kind of walk through the house cold to each other, agitated, they understand what's going on. But the kids don't. The kids just see what's going on, and they see mom and dad who are not having fun together.
Mhm.
May seem like they just hate each other's guts, and maybe in the moment they do.
Yeah.
But and if you're in that situation, it is no matter how good you are at carrying your cross, it's going to interfere. It's going to come through in the dynamics of your home. It's going to affect how you relate to your kids,
Mhm.
how just it affects everything. And kind of getting back to the football thing, little things can have a huge impact, good and bad.
Definitely.
And I think that's where I think and again, it's not to pick on the celibates, but it's sort of the same thing. Like, their struggle is their struggle.
Mhm.
And but our kids are our responsibility. And it's hard being a parent,
Mhm.
constant, like 24/7, all the time. You want to be the best person you can be, because the kids will pick up on your weaknesses and your bad habits, maybe more so than your
Then you can see it in
right,
yourself.
right,
Definitely.
right. You just do one stupid thing at the wrong time, and that kid picks it up, and that might be their habit forever.
Mhm.
So that's just where I think I think it's a huge mistake to assume we just gotta heap and endure the suffering this kind of suffering, which doesn't just affect the individual or even just the couple. It affects the entire family, these kids, their future marriages, their kid. Like it's a major issue.
And if you are abstaining, I think, like for me personally, you kind of hold part of yourself back, and you're not as loving or affectionate with your wife. And maybe there are couples that practice NFP that can be very affectionate, but I think that's pretty dangerous for the guy.
Well, again, yeah, especially if as Catholics we say everything else is off limits, there's no alternative ways to get some relief. That's just a spiritual landmine there. You have to hold back.
Yeah.
I mean, you listen to the normal Catholic, theology of the body style podcast. They talk about couples have to decide for themselves how far is too far, and for some couples, kissing, any kind of passionate kissing is too far because it gets gets things going and whatever, and that's crazy. Like, you shouldn't have to be that cold and distant to your spouse in order to get through and try to avoid falling into sin. It's not even just falling into contraception, it's falling into the individual stuff. That's really where I think NFP becomes really hard. It's not even that NFP itself is so hard, but it's what we're supposedly supposed to avoid during those abstinence periods.
And the reality is, it's close to 100% of people that can't follow this. I mean, just in reality, I mean, there might be a few people that can, but
yeah.
And I don't know what that says. Like, if everybody is just weak, or that the 3 guys out there are that strong, I don't know. And should it be that difficult? I don't know. We'll all find out in the end, but it's kind of a poor time to find out.
Yeah, the NFP brochure should say the abstinence is going to be prevalent. It's going to really suck. And one or both spouses are going to potentially commit a lot of mortal sins over the course of your marriage. That's the package.
Or you commit sins that people will judge as being.
Well, I'm just right.
Yeah,
taken to its extreme. That's what it looks like for most people.
Get your fast pass card to go to the confessional and skip the lines. And
yeah, you should be buying a house across the street from the Catholic Church. If it's not within walking distance, it's a near occasion of sin.
It's true though, man. Like, I mean, I wish that maybe there is a poll out there. How many people can really follow this perfectly?
And we get people show up in our comments, and I no disrespect to them who say, I'm able to do this, but almost without exception, at one point in time, it wasn't that way, and they had a porn habit or solo habit, whatever. It's not.
And do you think they just got old then?
Older than me, apparently. But so if the predictable way this plays out for most people is you are going to be hopefully a recovering sinner at some point in your marriage because of this. That's, I don't know. I think that's a problem. I mean, I think it seems to me that's a problem that needs to be looked at more so than, well, hey guys, this is the truth. No one ever said it was going to be easy.
It seems like you're set up to fail.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel like something good or holy. It just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't to me.
Yeah. Now,
there is some merit in suffering. I don't doubt that. But constant suffering, like you said before, you only fast for short periods of time. You shouldn't be fasting for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, and on Twitter the other day, one of the bishops, was it Strickland?
Yeah.
Was it Strickland? Texas? He was telling everybody stop using contraception. And I went into this but be forewarned, NFP sucks. Which is, I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with NFP. We use NFP. We're gonna keep using NFP, I imagine, until we die, or until menopause, hopefully. Hopefully that comes
Then
before
you go
death.
and turn it loose.
Yeah, right. Um, but I said, one woman said, "Oh, what do you mean?" It's, I'm like, well, over half your time should not be spent abstaining. And the woman was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did the math. Over half of our cycles are unavailable. So you are,
And then you're having sex during the time when she's less
yeah,
interested.
right." And so some of the women pointed that out. So um, that this is probably the biggest thing I totally thought I was misled about. Is I thought NFP was going to be periods of abstinence
Mhm.
that you deal with, not periods of intimacy. Occasional periods of intimacy is the way it feels. It feels like it's reversed.
Bait and switch, the master bait and switch.
Yeah, right. So I still, I don't know. I don't know what the alternative would be, but I think we need to be more transparent about this, and we need to stop creating this thing that NFP is this rose garden of whatever, and that suffering is, you know, it, if your marriage is suffering, that means it's working. I just really reject that idea. I don't think that's a good litmus test for the health of
Yeah,
your marriage.
it's true.
So
Ironically, there isn't going to be much suffering going on in the Russian households right now because they're going to pay women between the ages of 18 and 23 to have children.
oh,
So
18 to
they're
23.
getting rid of the NFP over there too.
Okay.
But they're only going to pay him. Putin's only going to pay him about 900 rubles, which is about $1,100.
Oh,
So,
huh.
or maybe that's euros.
Huh.
Either way, it's 1,100 US dollars.
18 to 23. Okay, well, we wouldn't qualify.
Thinking about defecting.
Yeah, right. Take me, Putin. Let me in. Suffering's a virtue.
Yeah, they're trying to reverse the dramatically declining birth rate and I suppose support any future war.
I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why that doesn't sound like a wonderful environment to have a bunch of children.
Yeah, and maybe $1,100 goes farther in Russia right now, but $1,100 barely buys groceries for a couple months.
I can't buy an iPhone for that here.
Just the toils and tribulations you go through, you poor guy.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think it helps people. All I really want to do here is help people know that they're not alone. And if you find this really difficult, you're not alone.
And it is.
And it is difficult. And maybe that's the way it's supposed to be, but I just don't think that's exactly right.
Well, I just don't think so either because there's no way people practice NFP from the beginning of the Catholic Church. I mean, I don't see any way that that's possible.
Yeah. And this is where I, not to get started on a whole different topic, but I'll kind of just leave a teaser here. This is where I really struggle with the idea that certain things like this are intrinsic evils, that they're just always wrong regardless of the circumstances, because if it was a step removed from that, maybe it's presumptively wrong or whatever, but I think of like the death penalty position, right? As I understand it, we've sort of evolved with the death penalty because part of why the death penalty is not really okay now is because we just have a much better ability to keep dangerous criminals contained, right? Whereas in the past, let's say in the Middle Ages, it was much more difficult. They were more of a risk to get out and escape and cause more mayhem. And so, the change in circumstances changes the moral calculation and our evaluation of certain things. And we certainly live in a different time now than even 100 years ago, where, infant mortality was very high. People didn't live that long. I think people, didn't have the same nutrition and stuff. And maybe, we've talked about this, if you're working hard physical labor all day long, maybe the drive isn't the same. I don't know.
Our Amish neighbors suggest otherwise.
Yeah, right. But I mean, just having large families is truly is becoming more of a liability than it was than an asset, like it has historically been.
So, like in the year 1800, the child mortality rate for children under the age of 5 was 462.9 deaths per 1,000 births. So nearly half the children die under the age of 5.
That's crazy.
That is. So those are very different circumstances than what we live under today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
That would be devastating.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you think God judges people differently based on the time period they live in and what they know? You have to admit that it's kind of possible, right? Like the people that live very simply, they're totally trusting in God, but they also don't fully know what they're doing. Whereas today we understand what sperm are, what eggs are, how it all works. We live under a completely different circumstance than the cavemen.
Yeah. And even in our current day, because I think the episode that's coming out before this one is with Christina. And she talks about having grown up in Colombia and how in Colombia, which is, a developing country, a lot of poverty, whatever, in the Catholic circles, they don't talk about NFP at all down there. That's the least of their concerns.
Really?
Yeah. And I think down there, contraception is, the government just gives it out like it's like women can just get it. And so that's just the way it's handled down there. I do think that this level of hyper scrutiny on NFP and sexuality is kind of a Western, uh, first world country issue.
It's because we have the ability to suffer more that we do. Is that what it is? I mean,
it's a weird price to be paid for being affluent, I guess. But
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, when you're not worried about where your next meal is going to come from, I guess then you start worrying about this stuff a little more, and you start reading more and listening to more. But
yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was an interesting article, and I just think that the Catholic space is very much populated by big voices like Christopher West and all those who really don't. If you go into those comments and you start sort of criticizing NFP, the swarms come in and give it the normal song and dance. And that's not a telling people, well, you just have to suffer, isn't really, for most people, I don't think is going to be all that helpful in the circumstances. And sometimes people just want to be heard. Just want to be heard and know it's okay to hurt and hate this at times. So
yeah. Well,
all right.
I agree, man. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess have fun suffering, all you good Catholics out there. Way to add to that suffering by listening to us.
There's merit in suffering.
There absolutely is. So you should definitely subscribe and keep coming back to more of this. You just don't
through listening to us.
You just don't have enough suffering in your life yet. So okay.
All right.
All right. Well, again, I'll try to post to that article in the description. If I fail to, someone make sure you make a comment so that I can post it in a comment, because I don't always go back and check to see what I promised I was going to do during these episodes. So, okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Jonah. And until next time, everyone, have a
Bye.
good one.